Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn the Rashis on the Mishnah Masechta Shabbos on Daf Beis Amud Aleph. Let's begin. Yitzias Shabbos. The Mishnah begins and says Yitzias Shabbos. The cases of Yitzias Shabbos are Shtaim Shen Arba B'fnim, Ushtaim Shen Arba B'chutz. There's a total of 8 cases. Rashi is going to explain what are Yitzias Shabbos. Haitzai Shem Rishus L'Shus, the carrying out from one Rishus to another Rishus, Ha'amuris L'Shabbos that are said by Shabbos. Over Gemara Mefarish, and the Gemara it explains the Hachanasa is that carrying into a Rishus, Nami Kokari Yitzias. He also calls it with the name Yitzias, which seems to be referring to carrying out of a Rishus. And the reason is Hayol, since Umaytzim Rishus L'Shus, he's carrying out of one Rishus into another Rishus. So even when a person carries into the Rishus HaYachid, it also could be called Yitzias, since he's carrying it out of one Rishus and bringing it into another Rishus. So here Rashi explains that Yitzias Shabbos refers to the transferring of an item from one Rishus to another Rishus in any direction. The Mishnah continues and says, the Yitzias Shabbos are Shtayim Shein Arba B'fnim, 2 that are 4 B'fnim for the inside. It says Rashi, Lo Eisan Ha'imdim B'fnim. This refers to those who are standing on the inside, which is the Balabayis. Shtayim and Atera, there are 2 cases of Atera for the person on the inside. What are they? Haitza'ov Ha'achnasa, the Balabayis, the carrying out and the carrying in that the Balabayis does, because the Balabayis is the one on the inside. Over Perak HaZerik Bereishin, and Perak HaZerik at its very beginning, Nafkalon, we learn it out, the Malacha of Eitzah, Moshe sent out an instruction, and they passed it throughout the camp, that the people should stop doing malacha. And what this was referring to is do not bring out from the Rishus HaYachid, your tent, to the Rishus HaRabim, to bring donations to the Machan Aleviyah. So Moshe said, stop doing malacha, and it was referring to bringing donations for the Beis HaMikdash. So we see that bringing the donations, the act of Hitzah, is a malacha. And it was a day of Shabbos, like we learn out over there in Perak HaZerik. And on these 2 cases of Hitzah and Achnasa that we're talking about now, of the Balabayis, Chayiv Chatas al Shekigase. A person is Chayiv Chatas when he's a shegig. Val's daine, when he's a zadeh, when he did it on purpose, karas is chayiv karas. Val lastra asay, and if he was also warned when he did it on purpose, skila is chayiv skila. V'chein b'chol melecha Shabbos, and the same is true by all the melachas of Shabbos. So here in this Rashi, on the word shtayim shen arba b'fnim, Rashi explains 3 things. Number 1, b'fnim refers to the person standing on the inside. Number 2, the cases are haitzah and achnasa of the balabayis. The 2 cases are when he carries out or carries in, which there's another part over there, so there's 4 things in Rashi, which is learned out from the pasuk Vayitzav Moshe Vayaviru Kol B'Machane, and the 4th one is the punishment if a person does either of these cases, either Eitzah or Achnasa of the Balabayis. The next words in the Mishnah are Shehin Arba. We said Shtayim, we explained the 2 cases that are Minatera. Shehin Arba that are 4. Says Rashi, Medivreya, Midrabanan, Haisifu Shtayim, they added another 2 cases, besides the Eitzah and Achnasa of the Balabayis, lesser lechatchila, to make it aser lechatchila originally. V'im aser, but if the person did it, potter is potter from a punishment. So lechatchila is not allowed to do it. The Rabbanan prohibited it, but if he did it, he's not chayiv. He does not receive any punishment. Later on in the Mishnah, we're going to describe what are these cases, what are the shehin arba. Because first we describe the shtayim cases. Later in the Mishnah and the Sefer, we describe what are the extra ones that were added. The Mishnah continues and says, Ushtayim shein dal b'chutz. There are also 2 that are 4 b'chutz for the outside. It says Rashi, Shtayim and Atera, there are 2 cases in Atera, which are Haitzah, V'hachnasa, the Ani, the carrying out, and the carrying in, the Ani ha'imid b'chutz, of the poor man standing on the outside. V'shtayim midivreim, and another 2 midrabanan, kisham malacha nasis al-yedei shnayim, when the malacha is done through both of them. Neither did the entire malacha. Rather, ze'oiker, one did the akira, v'zemaniach, the other one did the hanacha. In those cases, lechatchila aser, originally, it's aser, it's prohibited to do this, to do the akira, part of the malacha. V'im asan, if the person did it, potter is potter from a punishment. K'diyalef b'gemara, like we learn it out in the Gemara, that in this case he's potter. We learn that shnaim shasu, 2 people that did a malacha are potter. We learn it out in the Gemara and Daf Gimel, the source for this. The Mishnah continues and now describes the cases where the Ani did the whole malacha. Pashat Ani is yadif, the Ani extended his hand inwards. Says Rashi, v'chayfetz b'seicha, and there's an item in it. V'nasan l'seicha de balabayis. The Mishnah continues and says, and he placed it into the hand of the balabayis. The Ovid le'akira b'rishus harabim. So it comes out that he did an akira in the rishus harabim, v'hanacha b'rishus hayachid, and he did the hanacha in the rishus hayachid. What's another case of the Ani? Or if he took something out of the hand of the Balabais and brought it out. Says Rashi, what did he take out? Hachayf, it's the item. V'iniach b'rishus harabim, and he placed it down in the rishus harabim. The ovid lay, where he did akir b'rishus hayachid, the akir in the rishus hayachid, v'anocha b'rishus harabim, and the anocha b'rishus harabim. Says the Mishnah, if the ani did either that case of achnasa or the case of eitzah, ha'ani chayav, the ani is chayav. Explains Rashi, she'asa malacha shlema, because he did an entire malacha. V'harishtayim menatera lo'emed b'chutz. So now we have two that are awesome in a Torah, two cases that are awesome in a Torah for the person standing on the outside. The ani, either he did the act of achnasa or the act of eitzah. And the Mishnah concludes in these cases, Balabai is potter, that the Balabayis is potter. Explains Rashi, potter legamri, he's potter entirely, va'afilu lechatchila mutter. And even in the lechatchila, originally, he was permitted to do this. He was allowed to. It's not just that if he did it, it's okay. That's what it typically means. When we typically say potter, it means it's potter, but he shouldn't have done it. In this case, when it says potter, it means potter, and there was no problem for him to do it. And the reason is the whole lav midi of it, because he didn't do anything. Rather, the ani did the whole malacha of achnasa into the hand of the balabais, or the whole malacha of eitzah from the hand of the balabais. V'hachim mefarish b'gemara, and that's how it explains it in the Gemara, that when it says potter over here, it means potter and mutter. Continues the Mishnah and describes the cases of the balabais now. Pashat balabais, chulu balabais chayiv. If the balabais did the malacha, either of eitzah or achnasa, then the balabais is chayiv and the ani is potter. Says Rashi, v'arei shtayim and atera lo'emed b'fnim. So now we have two that are awesome in a Torah, two cases for the person standing on the inside. So we finished describing all the cases that are in a Torah, the two cases in a Torah for the person on the outside, and the two cases in a Torah for the person on the inside. Continues the Mishnah describes the cases where they're only awesome in the Rabbanon, the Shehin Arba that are four, the extra two cases that the Rabbanon added. Says the Mishnah, Pashat the Ani es chulu, if the Ani extended his hand inwards, the Ovid le Akira, that he did the Akira. But the Balabayas removed the item from the Ani's hand. The Ani didn't place it into the Balabayas' hand. Rather, the Balabayas removed the item from the hand of the Balabayas, and he placed it on the ground inside of Rosh Hashanah. So it comes out that the Balabayas is the one that did the Hanocha. Or the Mishnah said the first case was the Ani extended his hand inwards and the Balabayas took it out. Or he placed an item into it. Says Rashi, the Ovid lay Balabayas Akira. In that case, the Balabayas did the Akira. And the Ani took his hand out and put it down. Says the Mishnah, in that case, in those two cases, Shnei and Pturim, they're both Pater. So explains Rashi, Shalei also Echad Malacha Shlema, because neither of them did an entire Malacha. However, it's also for them to do this originally. They were not allowed to have done that. And the reason is Shema Yavayu Kol Echad Va'echad, because maybe each one of them will come Laseis Malacha Shlema B'Shabbos, to do a complete Malacha on Shabbos. If they do part of Malacha, they might come eventually to doing a complete Malacha. So Harishtayim Midivrayim, we have two cases Midrabanan. Achas La'oni B'chutz, one for the Ani on the outside, Va'achas L'Balabayis B'fnim, and one for the Balabayis on the inside. And the way we're seeing it right now is that the case of the Ani is when he picked it up and extended his hand inwards, when the Balabayis took it out. That was a case that was also for the Ani. And when the Balabayis put it into the hand of the Ani and the Ani brought it out, that was a case that's also for the Balabayis. And that's why Rashi now goes and asks a question, why when the Ani picked it up and brought his hand in, do we say it's a case that's also for the Ani? And we don't say it's also for the Balabais who took it out and put it down. The Balabais also did part of the Malacha. He did the Hanacha. So Rashi asks, if one asks, we actually just counted two cases for each one of them, not one for each. In the first case, when the Ani brought it in and the Balabais took it out, that's a case for each. They each did part of the Malacha. In the second case, when the Balabais placed it into the hand of the Ani, and the Ani took it out, once again, it's one for each, because they each did part of the Malacha. So we have two cases for each. Why are we saying it's only one for each? That in the case where the Ani brought it in, it's one for the Ani. In the case where the Balabais placed it into the hand of the Ani, it's one for the Balabais. Akira la'ani v'akira la'balabais. We have a case for the Akira of the Ani, and then we have the case of the Akira la'balabais, and then we have Anocha la'ani v'anocha la'balabais. We have the Anocha of the Ani, when he brought it out after the Balabais put it in his hand, and Anocha la'balabais, when the Balabais took it out and put it down in Rosh Hashanah. Says Rashi, l'kaman parechlo. This the Gemara is going to ask later on. Umeshayin, the Gemara answers, the loy choshev, that we're not counting Ella, only the Akiris. We're only counting the Akira part, Shein Tchilas HaMalachos, that they are the beginning of the Malacha, they are the start of the Malacha, V'ikol HaMeimer, and there we could say, there we're able to say, Shem Yigmur, and maybe he'll complete it. So when the Mishnah says Asr, it's true that they're both Asr, but the Mishnah is focusing specifically on the one that did the Akira, and the reason, what's unique about that individual, it's not just that it's Asr, but he has the ability in this specific situation to complete the malacha, because since he started it, he might come to complete it. Whereas the person who only took it out, he can't come to do a complete malacha. The malacha is already partially done. And therefore, when we say Shehin Daled, that are four that are Asr, the extra cases that are Asr Midrabanan, we're not just counting that they're Asr Midrabanan, but also that in that specific case he could come to completing the malacha.